When did music enter your life on a personal level?
Music entered my life before I was even born. My father, who was also a musician, when I was living in Guadalajara, when I was born in Guadalajara, music was already a big part of me before my mother even had me out in the real world here. My father had a 15-piece salsa band and a salsa cumbia band, and he played all over Guadalajara. Was a band leader, composer, arranger, played a lot of instruments, and I have 5 sisters, and I'm the second to the youngest. So when I was born, my father was like, "Yes, you are going to be the musician in the family." And so we had music everywhere. We had instruments laying around, trumpets, saxophones, piano. That's when he would rehearse the band at the house. So there was always music going. My mother was not really a professional singer, but she loved to sing. So I would learn all the traditional Latin American tunes that way. So that's the way music came into my life before I even could open my eyes.
Is there a memorable person in your youth who inspired your music?
There's actually a few. Of course, my father is on top of the list. He was a huge influence on me. He really loved jazz, and I think that deep down in his heart, he really wanted to have me be the jazz musician in the family. He had an incredible collection of music at the house, and a lot of it was jazz. So that's the way I got introduced to people like Dizzy Gillespie and Miles Davis, Thelonious Monk, Charlie Parker, Bud Powell, and so he's definitely on top of the list. So that's the king of the music right there. And then he took me to go see Dizzy Gillespie when I was a kid. I was like 6 or 7 years old, and I just remembered going to the concert and just trying to figure out why is his cheeks blown out so much, and why does he look like a bullfrog when he plays? And I couldn't figure it out. And so it didn't really, I was like, wow, this is great, I'm watching live jazz. But it didn't really strike me like, yes, I want to be a professional musician. But later on, Dizzy will come back up, and you'll see why I'm presenting or introducing you guys to Dizzy Gillespie in this format. So that's number 2. Number 3 happens to be Daniel Jackson, who is a San Diego native, passed away about 7-8 years ago. And he really kind of turned my life around into really respecting the music. And to this day, I always tell my students, if you take care of the music will take care of you. So he's definitely number 2. And then the third person was not a musician. He was just a big jazz fan that grew up around people like Clifford Brown and Art Blakey and Horace Silver. And he would come out to all my shows, and I would be like, yes, I just played my heart out. That was a great concert. And he would be like, man, that was sad. That was so sad. What are you playing, man? That doesn't make it. And then when I would play great, then he would like compliment me. Yeah, man, you're the best thing since sliced bread. He would always say that to me when it was like a good thing, But yeah, so those, I have many, but those are definitely the top 3 that come to mind. 2 more, John Clayton and Jeff Hamilton.
Can you share your motivation for creating Federal Jazz Project?
Yeah, well, the way that all started was that was the first year that the San Diego Foundation, they started a new program called the Catalyst Fund, where you can apply for grants for projects, unique projects that would make you as an artist step out of your comfort zone, out of your little box. So the thing that was presented to me was, how would you like to write music for a play, a musical? And I was like, well, I've never done that before, but I'll try it. And luckily for me, it was a deep honor to be able to work with Richard Montoya from Culture Clash, which is a comedy troupe, Latino comedy troupe based out of Los Angeles. And he was like, look, man, it's really about the history of San Diego, so you just do your thing. You just do your thing. And I did my thing. He's like, no, man, that's not what I wanted. And I was like, oh, okay, well, you have to give me some direction. He's like, well, imagine the music being that of like the 30s, the 40s, during that time. More like a noir movie, make it that kind of vibe. It's like, okay, got it. So Chula Juana came from, at that time I was hanging out a lot with Claudia Gomez. She's an incredible tap dancer here in town. And she's I don't really consider her a tap dancer. She's like a jazz musician because she really does it. She improvises. And I was like, and that was her character in the play, her name was Tijuana. It was Tijuana and San Diego. It was two characters. So I wrote the tune for her that featured her, and so it's very Cuban inspired, and that's probably the one that's the biggest hit out of the show, and the rest is history. You know, there was talks about turning it into like a little short movie, but that never really transpired. And but yeah, it was like my first big deal to write a big project like that. A huge production, and the reason I mentioned the Catalyst Fund is because when I went up to apply for it, everyone had, they had their agents and my manager, and I showed up in there alone with my trumpet. There was like 7 people that were interviewing. They gave 3 grants away, and I got one of the $20,000 grants for this federal jazz project.
Can you tell us about your history with the Rob Thorsen Quartet?
Oh my gosh, those are my brothers. I've known Rob since the year I moved here, 1995. And then shortly after that, I met Bob Boss. I consider them both family at this point. And with Richard Sellers, the same thing. You know, I met him before I moved to San Diego. I met him when I was getting my master's at Cal Arts in Los Angeles. And he wasn't going to school there, but he lived in that area. And he would come by. We would see each other at the same jam sessions. And then later on, I saw him here. He was at Croce's. He was playing at Croce's, the old Croce's on 5th and F. And we just looked at each other like, what? You know, you live here now? Yeah, I live here. And, and we just hit it off again and reconnected.
How did you go from a trumpet player to someone who seeks partnerships?
Well, I think that for me, it was at an early age where I figured out that I'm not going to make any money playing the trumpet. I mean, yes, of course you can make money playing the trumpet, but I wanted to be a musician that was really kind of more exploring what's out there. What are the possibilities? Because I look at playing the trumpet like a stove. You got your stove top. The trumpet's just one burner on. That's just one. But you have to realize you got 3 more. You got the little griddle. You can make some pancakes. You can turn the oven on. You got the microwave over here. You got the coffee maker, toaster. So that's how I looked at it. I was like, you know what? Why don't you start writing, man? Start writing. One person that really influenced me was Horace Silver. I got to play with him for a bit, and I brought him to San Diego to play a series of concerts. He actually called me when he found out that I was doing a tribute to him. And the first time he called me, I hung up on him because I thought it was one of my friends playing a joke on me. This is before cell phones. So. And then he called back, and he was like, I'm deeply honored that you're doing a tribute to me, and I want to attend your show. And that's when it hit me. I was like, oh my God, this is Horace Silver. So we hit it off. We became really good friends. He came down. I picked him up in his house in Malibu and brought him down here and put him up for a few days. And he attended all the concerts, and he got to hear me. So what it really was kind of like a little audition. And he told me, he was like, hey man, I like the way you play, man. You sound like Blue Mitchell. You sound like Lee Morgan. And I was like, can I get that in writing? Anyway, so like later on, he called me. He was like, "Hey, I have a rehearsal now. Would you like to attend the rehearsal?" I was like, "Yeah, sure, I'll come out." He's like, "No, I mean, I want you to play. Bring your trumpet." And I was like, "Oh, okay." So I show up, and immediately he was very welcoming. And it was like in this music store in the back. They had like a practice room, and that's where we rehearsed. Stein on Vine, Hollywood. Ricky Woodard was a tenor saxophone player that lives in Los Angeles. He was there, and he was the other horn player, so that was like comforting. I was like, okay, good, I feel better. And then we played our first tune, and he immediately stops in the middle of my solo, and he's yelling. He's like, no, this is like a gospel tune. Why are you playing bebop? And I was like, oh, okay. He's like, that's the problem with all those young trumpet players. And then he put me in my place, and but the sad thing about that was that he passed away before we could actually do anything. We had one rehearsal, and then he got really ill. He couldn't play anymore. And then about a year later, he passed away. But I have a picture of him in my bedroom, and it's to my friend and great musician, Horace Silver. And every time I wake up, I'm like, I'm gonna sleep in today. And I look at his photo, I'm like, oh, I gotta practice. So I just get up and do it. Well, actually, it was more of a business thing. He's the one that told me, copyright your tunes. Make sure you catalog your tunes. Make sure that you own your own master to recordings. Don't let any record labels own your masters, because once you give them the masters, they can do whatever they want with it. So it was more from a business standpoint. I remember even being in the car with him. He heard it was probably like a college band playing song for my father, and he was like, "Hey, whoa! Do you have a piece of paper and a pencil? I need to figure out who this is. I need to get my royalties." I mean, he was on top of it, man. He was like not messing around. You're staying in that little corner. You want to be in the open. You want to be able to explore. It's like if you never try, you're never going to know. If you're not good at it, then okay, then back to the trumpet, or back to writing. For me too, it's like it's really influencing the future, the next generation. So that next generation might be the oven, or I don't know, the coffee machine. But there's so many things that you really can do with your instrument. It's like let your instrument take you to different places. And that you were asking me about, just what that represents. It represents a lot of things. It represents not even. I mean, like you, for example, you're a great educator, and you're also a great player. And you have your crew here. That they're all alumni from your school, right? So it's like that's the biggest return right there. That's the biggest gift, that you keep those relationships with your students. And so that's another thing. But then there's also the possibility of composing, writing, arranging. You don't have to you might be a horrible composer, but maybe you're a great arranger. You can arrange, one of your favorite songs for a big band. But I think it's just really respecting the music. That's what it's all about. It's like I look at the music being like the roof that this stove sits right under. Because if you take care of that, then you're going to be cool as a cucumber.
What does it feel like to have shaped the future of music education?
Well, I think it just, for me, it's made full circle. I've had some great mentors in my life, and I'm just kind of like passing the torch on. And Nick Haldwell, there's a lot of Nick Haldwells out there. It's amazing what these youngsters are doing now, because they have the technology. Number one, I didn't have that. It's like I tell them all the time, you have no excuse to come in here not doing your work. Your work's already done. All you have to do is go to the computer and learn it. Transcribe that way. You can slow things down. I remember going to the tape player, like pause. Oh, no, I messed up. I got to rewind. Oh, and even with the disc player, pause, and then you would rewind it to the beginning of the tune. You're like, oh, you go crazy. I can just imagine what the older cats used to feel like when they had to do with the records, lifting the needle and doing all that. But back to your question, I think that there's a lot of people like that, a lot of young players that have a lot of talent. You just have to go out there and explore to not only find them, but they have to find you. They have to figure out what they want. It's like, do I really want to do Young Lions? Or do I want to do San Diego Youth Symphony? It's like, there's so many options out there. But the thing is, for somebody like Nick's age, he's just so dedicated. It's not like the jazz fairy showed up and said, you're going to be a great player, and that's Nick. And then the next house, he skips that person. And then, oh yeah, John Murray, you're going to be a great player. No, these kids work hard. It's dedication. It really is, because there's only you can only go so far with talent. It's like you really got to put the work in.
How do you think technology will impact music education?
Well, I think the technology is obviously here to stay. And for a musician, I think that you really have to dive in really deep to figuring out how to work this technology. Because I really didn't know what to do when March hit, and then everything shut down. For the Young Lions Jazz Conservatory, it was my responsibility to keep it going somehow. I didn't even know that there's, Zoom, you mean the cameras? No, it's like a platform where you can have meetings. Oh, okay. Then I had to do my homework and figure it out, and I spent hours, and then I said to myself, you know what? We can do this. We can continue school on this new platform. And I had to get creative with, I don't know how the other instructors were dealing with their classes, but I got really creative with my classes, and the students just loved it. And today, I'm still kind of using the same format. For example, I had my students they would have to pick a cartoon, animated, whatever it was. It could be short film, Bugs Bunny, whatever you want to pick. and you would have to mute the sound, and I would make them write their own soundtrack to that. And I had them do the same with the commercial. Like, okay, just mute the commercial, and I want you to write a theme song for this commercial. So there's like endless opportunities. You just have to be creative like a musician. You know, you have to really improvise and figure it out. The other good thing is that nowadays, with no recording studios being open, and you can't, you know, I used to do sessions in Los Angeles all the time. Guess where I'm doing sessions now? In my living room. And of course, you have to have a nice mic and all that stuff. But it's working out. I mean, do I like it? No. Is it weird just playing along to a Jamie Ebersol track? That's what it feels like. Yeah, it's a little strange, and it's really difficult to get creative and to get in that zone. But I think the more you do it, like everything else, it's just going to get easier.
How have you adjusted as a musician during quarantine?
Well, it actually really worked out for me. Back a couple of years ago, I found out that I had to have surgery in March, this last March, and I had the surgery, and I was told that I would be able to play for 3-4 months, and then the pandemic hit. So it worked out for me. You know, not only was I out of work, but every other musician in the world was too. So I didn't really feel that bad about my situation. I actually took advantage of it. I took the proper time off to heal, and then I got back to playing my trumpet. I had to relearn how to play the trumpet, starting from scratch, and so that was challenging. I went through my emotional roller coaster with that. I'm still going through that, but the fact that you know, you really couldn't interact with musicians anymore and play in live concerts was a big deal. It was a huge. It was very tragic for me because I was doing it 6-7 nights a week, and there was some days that I had 2-3 gigs and, you know, a couple of meetings with the symphony, and then I had, you know, take a plane to fly to play with the Clayton Hamilton Jazz Orchestra. But I think it's been really just psychological subject. Yeah, it's been a very psychological time for us. Not only, you know, of course, everyone, not just musicians, but the world. And I think the thing that I learned for these last 7 months is you have to just stay positive and believe that things will be better than they were 7 months ago.
What is your message for musicians in San Diego?
Stay strong. Stay together. I'm not on social media a lot, but I noticed that there's starting to be tension between musicians around town and around the nation, around the world. The very little opportunities for gigs that are available right now. I noticed that some musicians are kind of really taking it to heart, and they're like a little bitter that the other musician got the gig and not them. And it's starting to turn into little cliques here and there around San Diego County where musicians are not really sticking together. And I think the main thing is to stay focused and to remember why we're here. We're here to play music, not to get political about what's happening in the world. So let the music just guide you, and that's all I can say is just stay positive and love each other. You know, love the music. The music will love you back, and by the end of all this, you're going to know who your friends are. That's for sure.